In 2022, we will look back at films of 2021. It seems that we were right. Movies that literally nobody asked for. Okay, we're excluding non-franchise films because non-franchise films have struggled massively in 2021. But table about 5 franchise films that nobody asked for and they paid the price. So of course the first movie we talk about is Matrix Resurrections. Nobody wanted a Matrix 4. But because they said, you know what? Matrix made a lot of money back in the day. Let's make a fourth film. Yep. And yes, we're only talking about theoretical releases, not streaming reboots like Home Alone 6. Yep, that exists now. And it's considered the worst entry in the entire series, so Disney really paid in that price. But The Matrix Resurrections was a movie that nobody wanted, and it really sold by its box office. It does abysmally at the box office, only made $105 million. I bet it'll probably make more, around $200 million at the very end. But we compare this to a movie like Alita Battle Angel, where again, the critics were saying, oh, Alita's gonna be such a big flop. And Dune, with the two movies that are with Alita's another cyberpunk movie, which is why it's relevant in this conversation. It is Alita Battle Angel first, it's The Matrix, okay? People want a sequel to Alita, but instead we got a fourth Matrix movie that literally nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and nobody needed. Okay? Okay. And they ended The Matrix perfectly. I know the ending was not that great. I didn't really like the ending that much. But this made this movie that was like, oh yeah, remember The Matrix? Here's another one, because we told we wanted another Matrix movie. Okay? It's just, wow. Okay? And yeah, no one wanted a new Matrix movie, basically. This is the point I'm getting across. So, coming out on a movie that came out this year. Annual box office. The highest grossing movies of 2021. You'd think there'd be some big hits this year, but there were a couple. But out of the Marvel movies that were released this year, The Eternals stands out like a sore thumb. I get it, they want to introduce characters that nobody has heard of anymore. But The Eternals is a movie that literally no one cared about. Basically, The Eternals is based on some extremely obscure comic that, again, is not really that popular even among Marvel comic fans. So what did they do? They gave us a movie. Yep. They gave us an Eternals movie. And again, Marvel paid the price for making an Eternals movie. But even then, The Eternals still did much better than The Matrix 4. Coming on the heels of movies that no one asked for, we have... I know Clifford the Big Red Dog is technically a new movie franchise, but did anyone really want a movie about a kid show? Again, Clifford is not really that popular among modern day kids, so I was puzzled, why are they making a movie now? They could have made a movie when the books were actually popular, and they could have even made it animated like the actual original cartoon was. But nope, they had to make one in 2021, and of course it had to be live action. There's another pointless and useless live action adaptation, and apparently Paramount's making a sequel, because apparently, according to Paramount, it did really well on Paramount Plus. Be scared of the big new franchise called Clifford the Big Red Dog. If it does actually get a sequel, it will likely be a box office failure like the original was. Again, no one wanted a Clifford movie, okay? It was way past due for a Clifford movie. Again, when people ask for movies, they ask for movies that people will actually remember. And judging based off these box office results, Clifford didn't really do too well at the box office, and became yet another forgettable movie, basically. So the third movie of the year, the fourth movie of the year we're going to be talking about is Space Jam: A New Legacy. This movie, again, you could of course blame the Delta variant for this movie bombing, but literally everybody hated this movie. Everybody was in agreement that this movie was a disgrace to the original Space Jam. The original Space Jam was good because it was funny and unique. It also brought a real-life basketball player that everybody liked. Well, they made Space Jam 2, of course, because Space Jam is such a cult classic. How can they not make a sequel to it? Number one, well, they did everything wrong with this movie. First of all, the Looney Tunes in the original wanted to get a basketball player so he could teach them how to play basketball. After they realized that they couldn't win against the Monsters in the original. No, they actually had a problem. Instead, LeBron James gets sucked into the fictional world because reasons. I haven't watched the movie, so. But again, LeBron James is just unlikable. Okay? There are lots of much better basketball players you could put in the movie besides LeBron James. Okay, I think there's one that would maybe been more controversial, but we're not going to mention his name. Space Jam: A New Legacy is not a new legacy. It will be a forgotten legacy. And it'll forever be in the shadow of the original film, which will still be remembered for generations to come, as this movie will be saying on shelves. Other people saying, you know what, since we have seen the first Space Jam, maybe we should watch the second. It probably might not be that bad. And then remembering it is actually that bad. And then, yeah, this movie will be forgotten forever. Other than being the Space Jam 2. And then we have the last movie of this long list. A movie. Now we have number 5. So remember Spirit? That movie that came out a long time ago? That was about horses? That had pretty good soundtrack? Well, let's just make a sequel randomly. Oh yeah. And let's basically have a TV show that literally nobody had. A TV show of Spirit that came out 10 years ago. If this movie was made like 10 years ago when the TV show was actually popular, then yeah, this movie would have made money. But no, even with its $40 million budget, this movie basically was a failure. Nobody watched this movie because, again, despite it being a franchise film, Spirit is not really in the realm of conversation. It is one of DreamWorks' more underrated animated films. And the first movie didn't really do too well to begin with. The original Spirit movie didn't really do too well at the box office to begin with. So what were they thinking of making a sequel that came out 15 years after the original? Oh yeah, that totally won't flop. That totally will not fail at the box office and lose millions of dollars for DreamWorks. Oh yeah, well, and again, this is the first time a sequel that no one asked for came out 15 years after the original, and the original will probably still remember that afterwards. But again, unlike Matrix and Space Jam 2, where people just hated it and didn't want it, Spirit, it just nobody cared. No one really cared about this movie. And we thought maybe it would have had good legs because it was an animated movie, but even being an animated movie couldn't save it because Peter Rabbit 2 came out a week afterwards. So, a couple weeks afterwards. So, this movie basically bombed because, again, it was a sequel to a movie that literally everybody forgot about. And even the people who do like it didn't really probably care about watching this movie either. I really like the first Spirit movie. It is one of my favorite DreamWorks movies of all time. But I didn't want to see this movie either. Maybe it might when it comes on TV, but it's just the original one was so great. But I just didn't want to see it because why did we need a 3D animated sequel of a movie? Spirit was fine alone as a movie, as a original story. It didn't need a sequel. So, yeah, even I didn't want to see it. So, yeah. And yep, number 6. We have. Well, these are all non-franchise movies. Number 6, we have Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry has been done to death already. This movie isn't actually a failure. It made $132 million worldwide, which is a lot of money for a movie like this. And it made even further money on HBO Max. So while we're talking about despite this movie doing pretty well at the box office, it's just who really wanted a Tom and Jerry movie. This movie isn't, and this movie really wasn't really that well received. It is considered a really bad movie. I love watching the old Tom and Jerry movies shows from time to time. They're funny, and everybody agrees that they're funny and they're amazing. But newer Tom and Jerry is just not that great because they can't get away with doing this stuff anymore. That's what makes new old Tom and Jerry so great. It makes it timeless. But newer Tom and Jerry isn't that funny. It isn't that interesting anymore. There isn't really much conflict in the newer Tom and Jerry's. They try to play it safe. So they try to offend the least amount of people as possible. Which is why I just most people don't really care about new Tom and Jerry besides the little kids. And yeah, that's basically about Tom and Jerry 2021. And yeah, not many people really talk about Tom and Jerry 2021 anymore. More as like an afterthought. And it's really the Hanna-Barbera Cinematic Universe is really just gonna fail because they made the Scooby-Doo movie, which became forgettable, and now we have the Tom and Jerry movie as well. And now we talk about the last movie of the list, and that's another unfortunate failure. The Suicide Squad. They made this movie too early. Yeah, too early. And also released in the midst of a Delta variant that was sweeping the nation. The Suicide Squad is an extremely underrated movie. This movie was way better than the original, but this movie couldn't even beat its own budget. Yeah, it did well on HBO Max, but even then, this movie is still very underrated in terms of DC movies. This is what we sort of got instead of the 2016 Suicide Squad movie. This is the movie we sort of gotten, but then, instead of the 2016 Suicide Squad movie. This is the movie that sort of played in theaters in 2016. Same thing with Snack Night Justice League. That is the movie that's sort of been playing in theaters instead of whatever disgrace they put on the screens in 2017. This is the same pattern. But again, people didn't like the first Suicide Squad movie. They sort of put it on HBO Max instead of putting it in theaters and just released it on Blu-ray a couple months later. But again, they just put it in theaters, say, hey, there's a new movie this week. Watch it or not, we don't give a shit. And they didn't really advertise this movie either that much compared to the amount of money that Disney spends advertising Marvel films. But yeah, the Suicide Squad will probably continue to become one of the more forgotten DC movies of all time. And yep, that's basically about the Suicide Squad. And there were other movies we could talk about, like the Addams Family too. But again, it really shows no matter how. But 2022 will have its fair share of box office failures and box office successes as well. So yeah, we'll go on to the wild ride of 2022's box office, and I think that Jurassic World will probably be the highest grossing movie of the year. That's my bold prediction. The highest grossing movie of the year will not be made by Disney. It will be Jurassic World Dominion. So, goodbye. Or maybe the Mario movie might beat it. So,